Hi there, welcome to our second podcast, exploring the findings of Catapult PR's research survey into visitor attractions, with research independently commissioned through Gorkana. Catapult has been working in visitor attraction marketing for over 20 years, working directly with some visitor attractions, promoting them and assisting their marketing and content creation programs. With others we've worked on an indirect basis, either as part of a tourism campaign for a destination or whilst handling a campaign for a particular tourism theme, such as farm tourism or heritage tourism. As we like to say, we've marketed everyone from William Wordsworth to William Shatner. In part 1 of our review of the findings of our visitor attractions survey, we examined some of the challenges for visitor attractions in what could be a big year for the staycation, due to all the Brexit uncertainty. We also looked at what UK visitor attractions could be doing better and what they could capitalise on to a greater extent. In part 1, if you wish to find that podcast, we looked at number 1, value for money and visitor cynicism. Number 2, we looked at joint ticketing by visitor attractions and attitudes towards it. We then looked at the impact of petrol prices on visits by car and the importance of local residents to your visitor attraction. Perceptions of UK visitor attractions were also considered, and attractiveness plus access for all. If you wish to find that podcast, you can do so. It's on our website, catapultpr.co.uk, or you will find it in iTunes as well. But in this particular podcast, we'll follow on from part 1 and we'll be considering, number 1, the asset that is your tea room. Then garden attractions, how the visitor thinks you could improve. Thirdly, groups, do they really mix with your other visitors? And then heritage, is it viewed as being dull and dusty by today's consumer? Number 5 will be technology. Is it killing off visitor attractions? And finally, UK visitor attractions, can they compete with attractions overseas? To get the ball rolling, let's start with a real positive. I can categorically tell you from the findings of our survey that British visitors to visitor attractions just love a good tea room. In fact, 32% say there's nothing like a good tea room to round off a visitor attraction experience. If you make that 41% for women, you'll see just how important tea rooms are to your success. Still not convinced? Well, try the fact that 3/4 of 45 to 54-year-olds have deep tea room love, and then consider that this could be your highest spending group, and the sums and the buns should soon add up. Those living in the southeast, northwest and southwest have an above average love of tea rooms compared to the national norm. If you're in Wales, where it's only 10% who feel that there's nothing like a good tea room to round off a visitor experience, or in Northern Ireland, where it's only 6%, you could become a tea room trailblazer. You could source local produce, tell the story of the local area through your food and menus, and create sense of place. Put a lot of PR behind your tea room and build PR and blogging activity around a calendar of opportunities that emanate from key dates, such as National Cream Tea Day, and you could have customers eating out of your hands. Let me just tell you about a star amongst tea rooms. When I'm not running Catapult PR, I'm also the MD of a company called the County Day Company and the organiser of Northumberland Day, the County Day of Northumberland in the UK. There we have a lady called Melanie Martin, who runs Melanie's Tea Room in a place called Newbiggin-on-Sea. Whilst she's not part of a visitor attraction, she has created what you could regard as the blueprint for tea room promotion through Northumberland Day. It made her an award winner last year, but this year she's gone even further. She's organised a menu around local dishes like Northumberland cheese and nettle scones, and a dish cooked in local beer, and much more. She's named her tables after Northumberland castles. She's created activities for regulars that make them feel part of the tea room, such as knitting bunting and painting pebbles to hide and find. She's even getting a local choir in to sing to tea room customers. It really is sense of place on a plate and in a teacup, and you too could create that in your tea room to enrich your visitor experience, marrying your attraction and the tea room together through your activities rather than just viewing a tea room as a standalone annex. Focus more on the enrichment that you provide to visitors and serve up locality as well as loaves cut in various ways. You should find that your tea room becomes a destination in its own right. Then all you need to do is allow access without paying an admission fee, and you'll have a little profit centre. If you do have to charge entrance, make sure that you deliver value for money in all that you do in your tea room. On this particular point, people have shown us that they have high expectations. If you don't deliver on these, you could find the perfectly good tour of your attraction suddenly becomes less of a thrill than it was in the visitor's eyes. A tea room can really up your star rating, or we suspect downgrade it. So get it right. Spick, span, speedy service, and a local story played out via food and drink. Okay, enough of tea rooms. On to garden attractions now. We wanted to know whether garden attractions make too great an assumption about their visitors' gardening and plant knowledge. Do Maggie and Carol really know their ash from their aspidistra? Or are they simply arriving at your door because it's something to do and they'd like to broaden their knowledge of flora? Are they keen gardeners in the sense only that they've been infused by TV programmes from Titchmarsh and Co? Could they possibly feel alienated and excluded from the privileged club of the real gardener's world as they view your herbaceous borders? How in touch are the UK's homes and gardens with their visitors and their potential visitors on this point? Well, 16% of those that we interviewed said that garden attractions need to do more to bring plants, trees and flowers to life for the visitor that has not well that up on their gardening and species identification. So okay, that's about 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 of the people coming through your door, right? Well, that is unless you're attracting visitors from East Anglia, Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it's 1 in 5. That may sound manageable until you realise that a whopping 39% of 35 to 44-year-olds and 41% of 45 to 54-year-olds feel you should be doing more to enlighten them and bringing your plant, flower and tree exhibits to life. If you drew up an avatar of your target customer, we suspect that they would be in these age ranges. So action is probably needed to enhance the value of your visitor experience and generate great reviews. Don't take the high ground in the ivory tower view and feel that everyone should be better informed in general, or your audience may die altogether. We live in a world where instant information is now the norm, but I'm sure no garden visitor wants to be on their phone looking up every plant that they come across. Plants should not just have labels with botanical names, but with stories too. Interpretation is absolutely key. This is important to 27% of those in the South East, 21% in London, 19% in the North West, and 18% in Yorkshire and Humberside. Now, if you want other statistics, they are available, and you can download the full report on the tourism page of our website at catapultpr.co.uk. So you need to really make sure that you concentrate on your online content as well as on your on-site interpretation. Both could allow you to stand apart from your competition if you take a storytelling approach to plants. Explain what's really interesting or intriguing about them, whether it's the alder that the Irish travellers would once feel unlucky to pass whilst on a journey because of the orange blood-red colour that it displays when chopped down, or the silver birch that was felt to purify homes. Find that something that an absolute novice between the hollyhocks would remember for years to come, and do this as much as possible. Build your PR around what's interesting and use it as a driver of product development. It's so easy to think that one garden is much like another, and many perhaps are. So here's your gateway towards differentiating yours via storytelling. We've talked about how an experience could be downgraded by a poor tea room, but what could ruin a visitor experience? Well, try groups. We found that there are differing levels of tolerance amongst independent travellers when it comes to groups, and the least tolerant are folks like me living in England's northwest. There, 17% say a visitor attraction experience is ruined when a coach party descends, 1% more than is the percentage of unhappy visitors in London. It's 14% in the southeast, 12% in the southwest, and 11% in the West Midlands. So at least 1 in 10 visitors in 5 different regions of Britain go so far as to say the experience is, quote, ruined, quite a strong word I'm sure you'd agree, by a group. Overall, there isn't too much difference in the attitudes towards groups of school children and groups of adults. But please beware of complacency on this if your attraction is in London, as a quarter of people there say a group of school children arriving at an attraction during their visit ruins the experience for them. Wow, that's quite a lot, isn't it? As we all know, a group visit can be a godsend to an attraction. But is the trade-off worth it? How could you reduce the impact of a group so all visitors are kept happy? Firstly, I would say that it needs a bit of diplomacy and common sense, not just a broad beaming smile at the sight of 40 bodies heading through the turnstiles and a total lack of awareness when it comes to the gloomy expressions of those independents who have just paid their admission fee and thought how lovely and quiet it was today. If you've ever been in a queue waiting to board a boat, eyeing up which seat you're going to head for when boarding starts, there's nothing more annoying than seeing a group suddenly swan up the pier and board ahead of you. And I should know, I've seen that happen on a lake cruise. Miffed is one word for how you feel, but I'm sure there are many others. Just a word to advise those who will end up travelling with a group when they're buying their tickets is usually one that assists customer satisfaction and shouldn't be viewed as one that might lose you a sale. If people know the score, they can cope with it. So what else can you do? Well, try to segregate a group away from your independent visitors as much as you can, controlling entrance carefully so you can perhaps stagger the times at which certain exhibits will be reached to avoid overcrowding around them that makes them impossible to view. Independent visitors will not wish to be jostled and muscled out by rucksacks or have to listen to a teacher's narrative. They're not at school, but at leisure. And of course, nobody wants to have to put up with someone else's badly behaved children. I would suggest that you have staff on hand who can manage the situation, taking care of the independents to avoid making them feel like second-class citizens. Moving on to heritage, the impression we may have of it traditionally is that it's dusty and dull. But is that how the visitor sees it? This is what we wanted to find out. The great news, if you are a heritage attraction, is that 93% said they do not regard heritage as being dusty and dull. Maybe this is down to a new interest in genealogy or TV programmes like Victoria. Who knows? But it is a boost for those in the heritage sector. As you might anticipate, 8% of men versus 5% of women find heritage dull. And there is also a bit of a regional split, as 10% of people in the northwest also find it dull, higher than in any other region. The demographic splits when it comes to age group are very interesting. 20% of those aged 35 to 44 find heritage dull, along with 14% of 55 to 64-year-olds. So could this be a legacy of childhood spent walking around museums full of cabinets of stuffed exhibits, devoid of any animation, and with absolutely no interaction? Personally, I think it may be. Museums and great houses have only become really interesting places to be in the last 20 to 25 years, so there are a couple of generations who were probably bored to tears on school trips, viewing their tucking into beef paste sandwiches as the highlight. Not that I speak from experience, of course. OK then, so what can you do to attract these jaded age groups and perhaps increase your footfall by changing their viewpoint? Content would seem to be key. You're going to have to get them to your door, so you need to entice them in by shifting perceptions. Storytelling is key here too, both in your PR and your online activity. I would also say that your imagery is hugely important. Don't reinforce long-held views by showing cabinets full of stuffed animals. Change it up, make photos exciting, show animated faces around the key exhibits, shatter the myth. Obviously, if you have the budget for apps, interactive displays and touchscreens, it's a great help. But good storytelling and tactile opportunities to handle exhibits, plus great narration by volunteers and guides, and good informative leaflets, can work wonders. Search for the heroes at the heart of your heritage attraction and tell stories through their eyes. You could also look to find ways to keep dads occupied whilst mums tour the attraction, creating almost a heritage creche for males who really cannot face a suit of armour or case of fossils. Now in this part we've touched on technology, so let's continue looking at this theme. Has technology killed the attraction part of visitor attraction for today's kids, we wondered. We had to ask the question. And the findings don't make for great consumption if you are the marketing manager of a visitor attraction. 23% of those surveyed said UK visitor attractions need to up their game in the fast-moving 21st century technological world. That rises to 35% of those in the South East, more than a third, and it was only just below this percentage in both the North West and the East Midlands. Unfortunately, it doesn't get any better when you look at key demographic groups, like the parents considering what to do to entertain their children. More than half of 35 to 44-year-olds say UK attractions need to up their game. 43% of 45 to 54-year-olds feel the same way, as do 39% of 55 to 64s. In answer to another question, 14% believe video and phone games have killed the appeal of UK attractions for kids, and this rises to a third of those surveyed in the South East and nearly a fifth of those in London. Again, the key demographic groups for the paying parents are those most unequivocal in their feelings about this. 37% of 35 to 44-year-olds think the appeal of attractions has gone, along with 30% of 55 to 64-year-olds and 25% of 45 to 54-year-olds. So what can you do? I'd say really focus on your messaging to parents. Highlight the fun elements of what you can offer their kids and the ways in which this is more beneficial than screen time. Build up your educational credentials and appeal to teachers as well as parents. But the key thing really is getting feedback out of the mouths of babes, or really their older siblings. If you have converted a child and made them happy, this is key. Get their opinions and use their words in your marketing, speaking their language. You have to get down with the kids here to attract the interest of other kids, so use their terminology, not yours. Then you can maybe generate a lot of pester power that perhaps convinces the parent that it is worth paying your entrance fee rather than just downloading another app. And finally, whilst we're talking about perceptions, let's consider the feelings about UK visitor attractions in relation to overseas attractions. More than 1 in 10 of those surveyed actually felt UK visitor attractions to be less exciting than their overseas counterparts, and 6% say the only good UK visitor attractions are in London. That's a bit of a damning indictment of those in the regions. But let's temper this a bit. 20% of Londoners think the only good attractions are in London. Well, they would, wouldn't they? But also 12% of those in the southeast do feel the same, along with 11% in Northern Ireland and 10% in East Anglia and the East Midlands. The worrying thing for the UK visitor attraction is that a quarter of 35 to 44-year-olds think that overseas attractions are more exciting than UK counterparts, as do 20% of 45 to 54-year-olds. The future parental customer is also not enamoured, with 26% of 18 to 24-year-olds feeling that overseas attractions hold sway. Those used to the theme parks of Florida and the water parks of Spain are seemingly less inclined to rate a UK attraction in the same way. To round off our podcast, we would say here that if you market your attraction in the dull way, it will be perceived as dull. Liven it up with vibrant PR and online content and keep your events programme a welcome surprise rather than running the same events year after year. Change it up, and if you need ideas, get a good PR company on board. So what can we conclude? Well, really, we've looked at our 2 podcasts, and the key message is to focus on the stories that you can tell, whether you're the owner of an attraction or the marketing manager of one. There's nothing as powerful or engaging as stories, and it's a sure way to have target visitors beating a path to your door, keen to hear the next bit of the story or see the thing that they've heard described. Get this right if you can, or get an expert to sort it all out for you. Of course, if you need to chat about this, just email me. I'm always available. So email tellmemore@catapultpr.co.uk, or you can call me in the UK on 01253 446 925. And obviously, if you're outside the UK and you want to chat, it's +44 and then drop the O at the start. In the meantime, happy storytelling, and thank you once again for listening.